Hello, welcome back to my channel. I am Wigwam, and I am not just wearing these stripes because they are slimming, although let's be honest, I look good. Yeah. No, I'm actually wearing them because today we're doing another versus review and somebody must be here to declare the winner. And that person must be officially dressed for refereeing. 2 games will enter the video, but only 1 will leave in your Steam account unless you choose to buy both. I'm not the boss of your wallet. So let's meet the games. First up is the brainchild of one overly ambitious Swede, Iconoclast, an action platformer Metroidvania that has been in development for 8 years. Completely designed, programmed, and created by just one man, Mr. Joachim Konjak Sandberg, Iconoclast is truly a passion project that makes all of your passion projects look like garbage. Like the kind of stuff grandma wouldn't even put on the refrigerator. So who was brave enough to take on this 8 years in the making veteran? Well, those of you able to read the title will be able to know that it's Dandara by Long Hat House. You can't help but notice the absurd movement style that defines Dandara. You get around in Dandara by bouncing from wall to ceiling like an over-caffeinated 6-year-old. Indie games are known for taking chances and pushing the mold, and Dandara does it like no other. The risks Dandara takes in its gameplay are nearly as brave as the real-life Dandara, who was a badass Afro-Brazilian warrior woman who helped fight to protect a safe haven for ex-slaves. That is until being arrested in 1694 and committing suicide to avoid being returned to slavery. Except this is a video game, so they're not really comparable at all. I was just looking for a way to segue in that information because, like, damn, Dandara is a certified badass motherfucker and people deserve to know. Alright, so those are our 2 contenders. We have 3 categories. Let's get into it. First up, story. Dandara features a surrealist story about a land of oppressed people on the brink of destruction who need help. Dandara comes back to save them from their world without gravity, where salt is like a power to them, or magic? No, wait, hold on. Dandara is about a giant monster head who are oppressing forest gods. No, artists and musicians and other artistic types, so maybe it's all a metaphor? No, maybe it's actually about Dandara, and Iconoclast story is much more straightforward. In Iconoclast, you play a renegade mechanic named Robin who is illegally fixing things with her giant wrench. Mechanics have been outlawed by the oppressive religious oligarchy, and the laws are enforced by these demigod people who got their powers from these infusions of this oil stuff, or maybe it's salt like in Dandara, and what the f are these games about? Okay. Both of these games tackle some pretty large concepts. They both provide something that the player can really invest themselves into and dig around in. At times, they both come off as absurd or a little over the top, but in both cases, they provide a deep backstory and lore that the player can choose to enjoy or not. It's not essential to understand every aspect of what's happening, but for those who enjoy that type of thing, there's a lot there. However, between the 2, Iconoclast does a better job of having an easier to follow plotline with realistic characters. In Iconoclast, you have relatable characters in an insane world. So while things happening may seem confusing at first, the characters guide us through the action by remaining grounded. Their actions, motivations, and relationships with each other are easy to understand and act as a delivery method for the larger concepts that define the world. In Dandara, you don't really have this layer. Things are strange and for the most part just get stranger. While the story can be thought-provoking and intriguing, it lacks a human element that makes it more understandable. Point to Iconoclast. Next up is presentation, a category that formerly used to be known as 2 separate categories, visuals and music, but I've decided to wrap them up together because I'm a ref who's gone mad with power, and if you have a problem with that, might I suggest you eat my ass. So in Dandara, we have got some truly inspired visuals. No, literally, one of the first NPCs we meet is actually inspired by this iconic painting. I am sure there are plenty of other examples like this from the game, but I am too uncultured to catch them. The pixel art itself is proficient, nothing over the top spectacular, but I really enjoy the small touches. The way each area feels unique, the way boxes kind of just float off into space once you knock them loose from the ground, the animations of these skulls as they come to life, stuff like that. It gives Dandara its personality. This is where the surrealist elements really come to life. The music is solid as well, again on par with the visuals. They're all fine and fitting with the areas, but nothing that totally blew me away. Iconoclast has a clear vision of a single creator bringing his world to life with the polish of 8 years of development. It's a tough comparison for Dandara to stand up against. Dandara is certainly above average and at times very impressive, but Iconoclast is just something special from start to finish. It has a unique visual style that effortlessly flows from area to area. Monster designs feel unique, characters have a distinct style. Really, the entirety of the game has that distinct Konjac look to it. Only a few other games could rival the amount of detail and expertise of Iconoclast. Last year's Owlboy comes to mind, but then again that game was nearly a decade in development, so maybe Dandara should have just taken another 6 years to polish up its graphics and then it could have competed. As it is though, point goes to Iconoclast. So that's it, Iconoclast has won 2 out of 3 categories, right? Must be the winner, except no, these are video games, so nothing matters more than the gameplay. Why even discuss the other categories then? In Iconoclast, you use your wrench to help you navigate the world, unlock new areas, ride super rails, solve puzzles, and fight enemies. In addition to that, you also have your gun with multiple attachments, which helps with all of these tasks also. This is where I run into my first issue with Iconoclast. Iconoclast is often much more about puzzles and exploration than action and combat. That's fine. What's annoying is that your grenade launcher / missile shooter is a better weapon than a puzzle solving device because your grenades roll instead of sticking in place. In combat, this is great. But when a puzzle requires multiple blocks to be moved by precisely aiming grenades at the red sides, only to have the grenades roll slightly too far to trigger the block, it gets frustrating. Now multiply that by the fact that you're doing it throughout the entirety of the game, and you kind of have an issue. Moving on from that, Iconoclast does have a lot of positive features. There's the counter mechanic you often use in gameplay to fight enemies and certain bosses, which is fun. Gun combat is solid, but would have greatly benefited from the ability to lock yourself in place and aim, as hitting the diagonals without running face first into enemies feels impossible at times. There is an upgrade system that allows you to trade collected materials for equipable upgrades. You have 3 slots to fill, and you can mix and match any combination of upgrades, although they do break and go away as you take damage. That part of the mechanic I thought was totally unnecessary. Additionally, while some people seem to enjoy customizing for every area based on the situation, I never once found a reason to change my layout. The most useful upgrade was a fast charge time on the electric ability that the wrench has. It allows you to charge the wrench in 1 spin instead of 1.5 spins. However, I don't think there was a good reason to make the wrench not charge in a single full spin to begin with, so it's somewhat bittersweet. Iconoclast is always throwing puzzles and new concepts at you, which for some will be great. Just don't go into this game expecting a lot of action like I was, or you might find yourself quite disappointed when you spend 2 hours solving a multiple elevator puzzle with 7 floors moving up and down and moving this elevator to this elevator so you can go up to this floor. It's tedious. It's a tedious ass level. Dandara takes a very different approach. It's what professionals might call a little more balls to the walls, as in if you had some balls, you could place them pretty much on the wall. You have to slightly charge your shots as you take aim and fire at enemies that come at you from literally all directions, including below you, which at times is on the ceiling. And it's exhilarating, challenging without being frustrating, fun to play, and a blast to master. But I know what you really want to know about is how Dandara's movement works. Does it work well or does it not? I knew going into this game that that was the mechanic that would make or break it instantly, and I'm happy to say it makes it. There are a lot of small touches to this mechanic that just make it work so well. The level design is stellar and plays into this mechanic as if it was the norm for games and not the exception. The cursor always defaults to the last landable area you passed over, so precision is helpful, but not required at all times. And once you start to master it, flying from one end of the room to the other makes you feel like a video game god. In addition to the movement, Dandara features one of my favorite upgrade systems. You gain levels by collecting salt and bringing it back to a save point. If you fail to bring it back to the save point, you have a chance to recapture it by making your way back to where you died and recollecting it, much like Shovel Knight. Once you do successfully bring it to the save point, you can trade the salt for levels, and each level is worth 1 upgrade point, which you can spend on overall health, health recovery effectiveness, power bar, or power bar recovery. You collect health potions from the levels, and these refill fill at base camps like the bellflowers did in Momodora, what I did was always make sure my health potions were worth a full heal so I could always maximize my potential health. Dandara's biggest shortcoming to me though is its difficulty in navigating the map. The map doesn't really indicate where you enter the stage or which way is up or down relative to your current location. When you realize that the world around you is constantly rotating, sometimes multiple times within a single room, you can get disoriented quick. Since a large portion of this game is exploring, this can be a hindrance. I found myself just checking the map on every screen to help memorize where I was and where I was going. My biggest issue with this isn't even how it affects the overall gameplay, just that it would be so easy to fix and have such a large impact. Both of these games also feature a large variety of Metroidvania genre staples. Different areas that need to be unlocked and explored, where you find new abilities that unlock further areas. While both of these end up being somewhat linear, Dandara felt more like the traditional independent explorer, where it's up to you to go off and figure things out. While Iconoclast was always there to point you to the next objective with its story, to the point where Iconoclast story somewhat oversteps into gameplay. It just felt like there were cutscenes every time something semi-significant happened. So much so that at times cutscenes start to feel a little redundant and going over the same information, and while I enjoyed the characters and the humor was good, there was just a bit too much of it for me. At times the story totally blows you away, but at other times you wish it would go away. To me, the real deciding factor at the end of this was while Iconoclast had some really great moments, it also had some areas that absolutely killed the pace of the game for me. Whether it was a forced stealth bit, or whether it was the elevator part, or whatever, there were moments where the pace of the game comes to a grinding halt. Meanwhile, in Dandara, things start off fun and just keep growing. So ultimately here, the winner for me is Dandara. Hooray! While Iconoclast is certainly an extremely polished project, it was also a mix of highs and lows, whereas Dandara was more of a constant fun. Sure, in Dandara the story may take a backseat to the gameplay, but I prefer that over the other way around where the gameplay is riding shotgun to the story. In the end, both games do have a lot to offer with over 10 hours of gameplay each, great visuals in both, a lot of inspiration, and some really talented developers. So, while my winner is Dandara, as always, if you're brave enough, go ahead and try both and let me know what you think down below in the comment section, as well as if you're new here, subscribe and like and do all that other stuff that YouTube people tell you to do, cause it helps us. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna take my new uniform and pretend to work at Foot Locker and steal some shoes. Video. If you don't, that is fine. The video will just end now.